You better recruit the council.
So it's being deferred.
If everyone would take a seat, we'll call this meeting to order. I would like the Boy Scouts and the Sons of the American Revolution to come forward, please. We'd all stand as the flag comes in.
Color guard. Hope. To the right. Face. Present. Colors.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Boy Scouts and Sons of the American Revolution, the council would love to get their picture taken with you if you've got a moment, if we'd all come forward.
And juke.
Gentlemen, come up here.
All right, ready? To the left. Face.
There we go.
Just follow.
Follow me. Come on. They planned it the other way.
So cute.
That's what I like about a plan.
It works every time, doesn't it?
Got this guy. Right. I'm switching a picture now.
Good, because that's so now I'm on your video saying, Jack, get your hands on your bucket.
All right. That's a big All right.
We've got it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Boys, I want each one of you to come to the microphone and introduce yourself. Here's the microphone. Get it organized.
Way to go, guys.
We'll wait just a minute. The council will return, and then you can begin. You may proceed.
I am Jack Fallon of Pack 135. I am Luke Baker of Pack 135. I am Jack Malden, attending Pack 135. I am Jack Merrill, and I'm in Pack 135. I'm Kevin Fallon, and I'm in Pack 135.
Gentlemen, it's good to have you. Let's have a hand for the Boy Scouts. Councilmember Orleans is a former Life Scout. Councilmember DiPolito is a former Life Scout. Councilmember Price is the mother of an Eagle Scout. And I can take credit for still being an Eagle Scout, because once you achieve that award, they don't take it away from you, regardless of how low you drop. So I'm still an Eagle Scout. Well, Oliver, do you want to come say something about the Sons of the American Revolution before you leave? We wanted to thank you all for coming. Since you're dressed up and looking so fine in your new title,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're just very pleased to team up with the city and have you honor Patriots Day and reading the proclamation. Certainly appreciate that. It's an
well,
honor
let's
to be
read the
here.
proclamation while you're here. And this is brought to us by the Sons of American Revolution. And we're recognizing Patriots Day on April 19th. And that's because whereas on April 19th, 1775, a momentous day in our nation's history, and whereas in the early morning hours of that day, three patriots, Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Dr. Samuel Prescott, rode through the streets of Massachusetts to warn fellow colonists that British troops had been assembled and were advancing with the intention of capturing Patriot leaders and military stores. And whereas, answering this alarm, men and women congregated on the village green in Lexington on the morning of April 19, 1775, took up arms and commenced the struggle that would end England's control of the American colonies. And whereas the shot heard round the world was fired in Concord by determined patriots from the Middlesex countryside who confronted the redcoats and ultimately forced the British to turn back at Northbridge. And whereas Minutemen, militia, and colonists from cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth joined forces along the Battle Road at Menominee, now known as Arlington, and overpowered the retreating British. And whereas it is appropriate that we recognize the importance of this day in our history and pay tribute for the dedication of those assembled on the village green in Lexington for that decisive battle. And whereas the Piedmont chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution, an organization of lineal descendants of patriots of the American Revolution, reminds us of the courage and sacrifice of our founders who pledged their lives, fortune, and sacred honor to bestow the blessings of liberty upon this great state and nation. Now, therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim April 8th, 2013 as Patriots Day and urge all citizens to become more knowledgeable of the role of the Revolution played in the history of our great nation. Let's have a hands for the Sons of the American Revolution. Thank you for coming today. Anything else to add to that wall?
No, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you.
I think y'all wrote it, so I appreciate the opportunity to read it for you. Welcome, and we're always good to see the
Thank
Sons.
you for reading it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us.
At this time, I will call upon who is with Public Works? Councilmember Eigelhart. I think this is your department who is responsible for this great recognition.
Thank you, Mayor. That's correct, and they've done a great job, and I think, well, there he is. Mr. Moore will come by and tell us about our big poster, our banner we have in the back, and more.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You see the banner in the back, the sign, which will be adorned with the Roswell logo and placed around town. This is in recognition of Roswell becoming a certified community wildlife habitat. This is a program of the National Wildlife Federation. We are only the third community in the state of Georgia, the 66th nationwide, to achieve this distinction, and this indicates, to me, it indicates that we have a pretty good environment that will appropriately support wildlife without pushing them out like often happens in urban areas. Anyway, this has been a year-long effort with partners of the Roswell Garden Club, the Martin's Landing Garden Club, and the Recreation and Parks Department, of course, who are instrumental in all of these sorts of things. Vicki Culbreth, our Environmental Education Coordinator, and Janet Lieberman, Environmental Programs Manager, have been the driving force behind this. They have engaged many of our citizens, many of our community entities, our schools, the Chattahoochee Nature Center, and so forth. And we will receive the presentation from the National Wildlife Federation on April the 20th. That is a by-invitation event. We're happy to invite anybody that would like to come, but we want to know that you plan to come. So if you'll contact Vicki Culbreth or Janet Liberman with the city and let them know that you would like to be a part of that event. April the 20th, that's a Saturday, and will be a very nice presentation by the National Wildlife Federation. So,
Let's have a...
Janet, anything you care to
Anything
add?
to add to that? Come forward! Let's have a hand while she's coming up for this great accomplishment.
I was just going to add, the event is April 20th at Smith Plantation at 1 o'clock. So we do hope you'll
What
be
day
here.
of the week is that?
It's a Saturday.
It's a great day for it.
It's a great day for it. It's 2 days before Earth Day. So, and we'll get a nice certificate. It's a big deal. We were hoping for number 2. Johns Creek sneak.
Slipped in
Yeah,
front
they
of us.
slipped right in there and got theirs about 4 months ago. So, but we're excited. Vicki gets all the credit. She really does. She's the driving force behind this. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're back to the business part of the meeting now. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon...
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just wanted to call to the attention of those who were at the meeting and maybe watching also the number 3 and the citizen input that we're hoping to have to participate in that. The pattern book for the aesthetic improvements at Holcomb Bridge Road and State Road 400. So we'll be soliciting citizen input for that.
And if the citizens wish to have an input on this pattern book, which talks about the sidewalks and the appearance of sidewalks and street lights and landscaping and just how the appearance, who would they contact?
I think Steve Azenbrack, Director of Transportation, will be soliciting people who are interested.
And the date of the public information meeting? Not said yet. All right. So it'll be up on the website.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We will stay tuned. All right, and with that, we'll turn to liaison to the Admin and Finance Department, Councilmember Rich DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to amend the master lease agreement and sign a contract with Dell for the mobile data terminals, ruggedized laptop computers in the amount of $265,875.92. And these, I believe, are primarily for our public safety employees, and it's going to be presented by our IT Director, Michelle Rutledge.
Good evening. We put out a proposal for new MDTs for our public safety vehicles. That includes police, park police, and fire, and our Dell ruggedized XFRs won the proposal. The proposals were evaluated. We allowed the employees to have some input into it, and then we also did some field testing in the cars and the vehicles, and the Dell XFRs won out over the GTEC, and Panasonic did not show up for the exercise that we did.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Rutledge, I have a couple questions for you. Actually, one, a clarification that this was the low bid.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the second question I had for you was it's an amendment to the master lease agreement. So this is amending our contract for all of the leases we have on the city computers.
It goes along with the 400 desktop replacement program that we have.
Okay, so when it refers to amending the lease agreement, it's amending the desktop lease agreement, is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'll have to let Keith Lee speak to that.
Yes, sir. We have a master lease agreement with Dell, and there's already one amendment, and that is for the desktop computers. This would be a second. Each time we do a lease option with Dell, it becomes an amendment to the master lease.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any other questions? Any questions or comments from the audience? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands.
I didn't make a motion.
You didn't?
But I will move to approve.
We have a motion by Councilmember Dippolito. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll hear from Liaison to Community Development Department, Councilmember Nancy Diamond. I'm trying to move it, Councilmember.
Thank you, sir. This item is CU 1204, CV 1205, 275 Hardscrabble Road, land lots 359 and 360. This item was deferred from the March 11th Mayor and Council meeting, and Jackie Dybel is here to tell us about it.
This is a conditional use for World Harvest Church at 275 Hardscrabble Road. The applicant is requesting deferral of this item to the May 13th Mayor and City Council meeting. Do you have any questions?
Do we have any questions? Do we have a motion for deferral?
Move to defer to May 13th.
Motion by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second for? We have a second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding this motion for deferral? And the date was to May 13th. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this motion for deferral? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. All right. Are you opposed? We have 5 in favor, 1 opposed. Passes by a vote of 5-1 with Councilmember Price dissenting. We'll call the next agenda item.
I'm working on it. I'm trying to find where it starts. All right, I may need a helper. Thank you. This is item RZ 1211, CV 1206, and CU 1205, 2715 and 2725 Holcomb Bridge Road. This is Tapestry House expansion, the Jennings Group, land lot 824. Ms. Dybel.
Thank you. As Councilmember Diamond indicated, this is rezoning 12-11, concurrent variances for 1206 and conditional use request for 1205, located at 2715 and 2725 Holcomb Bridge Road. The applicant is requesting to rezone from Fulton County Annexed to OP, which is Office Professional, with conditional use request and several variances. This is an aerial of the property. To the northwest, you have the Holcomb Ponds Apartments. To the east, you have Seven Pines Apartments. South, across Holcomb Bridge Road, is Holcomb Springs, an office, and the Holcomb Bridge Middle School. To the west of the property is the Weed Pro office, and also a brand new, it's not shown on the map, but there is a brand new office clinic that was approved there recently. As you can see, this is the zoning of the property, Fulton County Annexed. This is the site plan for the property. The current building is existing. It was built under Fulton County zoning classification, and the new building is as shown as proposed. The applicant is requesting several variances to the property. 2 of the variances relate to the existing building, the setback and buffer. Due to the zoning approval by Fulton County, the setback and buffer are based on those zoning districts. However, with an OP zoning classification, the building setback would be 50 feet with a 40-foot buffer. So 2 of the variances, as shown on the location here, are basically for the existing building. The third variance relates to the height. The applicant is looking for 3 stories with a basement. As shown on the drawing here, sections A, B, and C, they have given you a visual description showing the height limitations for A, B, and C on their site plan. The applicant can answer other questions related to the height when he discusses his application. These are the variances: height to allow for 3 stories in a basement, and 40-foot buffer and 50-foot setback due to the existing building. The staff recommended approval with 2 variances, which is to the March 7th site plan, and a combination plat for the 2 parcels shall be completed and recorded prior to the LDP. The Planning Commission also recommended approval with the 2 staff conditions, and as I stated, staff would recommend approval with our 2 conditions. Do you have any questions?
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Dybel, a few questions for you. First of all, the variance for the height is just due to the number of stories.
Correct.
It's actually not a variance for the height itself.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes. Under the OP zoning, it's a limit of 40 feet. It's basically, and 3 stories. So it's 3 stories with a basement.
Okay, but it's within the 40 feet measured from the street, because from the street it's really only a story and a half, 2 stories.
If you look at their drawings here, you'll end up seeing basically, I think, if I'm correct, only 2 stories when you're looking at from the drive on Holcomb Bridge Road.
A couple other questions for you. The DRB made a lot of comments about a site plan, which I believe this is different from the site plan that the DRB was reviewing.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, actually, thank you for pointing that out. The applicant changed their entire site plan and moved the building up. They've also met fire code requirements by, they met what the fire has asked for. They have done what transportation has asked for by changing 3 curb cuts, which was shown originally, down to 2. And also environmental and stormwater. So the applicant has met with the staff and worked through the plan and listened to what the Design Review Board said and changed their plan to meet their requirements.
Okay, good. Yeah, I like the way the building lays out now. It's less obtrusive on the street, so it does appear that they were consistent with the DRB comments. One last question for you is specimen trees. There are a number of very large specimen trees along the front of the property. Are any of those worth saving, that we could put islands within the parking lot and maybe shift some of the parking around to try to preserve some of those specimen trees?
The arborist did review the plan, and they were in compliance with the tree plan, and yes, some of the trees are coming out. However, due to the stream buffer area that's back there, they've met the requirement.
Well, I know they've met the requirement as far as replacement, but it's always a shame to remove a specimen tree when we can avoid that. And in the past, we've requested applicants to try to work around the specimen trees. And I know there are grading challenges on this particular site. There's only so much room to put building and the parking and so forth. But I would like to understand where the specimen trees are. Maybe the applicant can address that. See if there is a way to put an island or 2 in the current parking area, maybe put some parking somewhere else and try to preserve some of those trees. If they're worth saving, I don't know if they are. That's another question for the arborist, probably.
I will, while the applicant's giving his presentation, I'll take a look at the arborist comments for
thank you.
There's one other thing transportation did ask for, was a sidewalk, and I don't know if this thing works. I don't know if you see it up there, but they were looking for a sidewalk from Holcomb Bridge Road through the parking lot area to the existing sidewalk on the site plan. So that is one thing that's not been addressed. Other than that, everything else has been addressed by the applicant.
Could you show us
Where that
specifically
is?
where the sidewalk gap is on this plan?
Where the transportation department was looking for was for, oh, I brought the wrong plan. Well, to go in this area. So if you look at the site plan, sorry. Tree plan will do it. The applicant, the transportation department was looking for a sidewalk to connect right in this area would work pretty well.
A sidewalk from the sidewalk along the road to the
Yes.
sports facility.
A sidewalk along from Holcomb Bridge Road through the parking lot to connect with the existing sidewalk that the applicant's proposing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? At this time, we'll hear from the applicant.
How to do this. You did it?
Just use your handouts or...
You can use whatever you want. I'm not really good with it. It's Brad.
Okay. Good evening. My name's Tim Watt with Peacock Partnership. We're a design firm that's been hired by Insignia Senior Living to look at the design for this project. Appreciate the opportunity tonight to present to you. As Ms. Dybel said, we've been through the process, thank you, with staff through Planning Commission and here tonight to try to seek approval of this basically rezoning. She's given you some of the history on the project as it relates to Fulton County and O&P. You probably don't want me to, or need for me to repeat that. Certainly from a project perspective, the existing facility is a 32-bed facility that was originally in Fulton County and was approved to go up to 75. The current owner has bought the property next door and has combined the two for a single plat. That's 5.95 acres. So all in all, we're asking for going from 32 to 100 as a total, 68 and 32, on the 6-acre site. You're right in noticing that in the previous plan, when we went through the first phase of Design Review Board, the facility was 100,000 square feet. It was 5 stories. It was 132 maximum occupants. So we have made lots of changes in response to the DRB and, again, staff. There's originally 3, currently there are 3 access points to the sites, one for Weed Pro, which is a flag lot, which is a street, basically there's an easement there and we share that. One for the main entrance and one for Tapestry. We kept those originally and now we've combined that through the fire marshal, if you will, and we've turned that into 2. So we have just 2 instead of 3. So we've reduced those. I think I'd like to again point out that as a project from a tax base, it's a good solid tax base, has very low impact on traffic, no impact on your school system, low utility consumption and good quiet neighbors. You did bring up a point that I'd like to address about the trees. The entire site is covered in trees, and I think as you can see, excuse me. As you can see here, in this existing area right in here, there are about 4 or 5 fairly large oak trees. We looked very hard at trying to save those and worked with the arborist. The challenge is the fact that when you take those trees and put them together from a tree ring perspective, which is where you're really trying to stay out of that tree ring, the disturbance would have been too impactful on those trees and just moving around right now. Currently, there is concrete and parking lots of varying styles because the property owner that was there before had a concrete and masonry company, so they basically have a variety of different kinds of floor finishes out that currently go around all of those trees at this point, and that all has to come up, and the arborist, was concerned that the trees wouldn't make it. So basically we've met all the requirements for recompense. Again, that's a total of 6 acres. The entire backside of the property is currently heavily wooded with lots of large specimen trees that will remain in the process. You'll notice there's a fairly large undisturbed buffer, which is right here. And we've pushed the building about as far back from Holcomb Bridge as we possibly can. We have turned that to create a different presence in hopes to try to marry up the 2 buildings as well. One's the existing building is a single story. It's somewhat down in a hole.
When you go by, you might not even notice it's there. If you look over to your right, you'll see the rooftop. But this is the expansion, and this is the hope that we can get that zoning approved.
Does the council have any questions for the applicant? Councilmember Diamond.
Can you tell us a little bit, well, first of all, so there was a request from staff to put a dumpster pad on the new site, and I'm not seeing that on there. Is that somewhere I just...
Actually, where that is the existing right now is making improvement to the existing dumpster, as this is one single property.
Okay.
It basically just sits on the parking lot top from years ago. So we're going to put an enclosure in, tie it to the sewer system, meet all the current requirements for Roswell. Something else that the project's going to do as well, from a stormwater perspective, this is going to be the detention facility for the entire property. Currently, there isn't a detention facility on the property, which at the time wasn't required, so we're going to actually pick up stormwater that's currently running off into basically this gully behind the existing facility and tie it into the new facility.
Can you talk to us about the sidewalk request?
Yes. Basically, as Ms. Stivel had pointed out, we've got a sidewalk that's a continuance from or along Holcomb Bridge Road. And what was requested was to take this sidewalk here, tie it in, and basically put striping across the parking lot versus concrete in the paving to tie the two together, just so there's a clear, accessible path from the sidewalk to the front of the facility, off of Holcomb Bridge Road.
And is that something you plan to do, or?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Price.
I just was wondering if the number of parking spaces was a number that you felt was necessary for the structure, or was that imposed?
Well, currently it's proposed. The requirement is...
I mean, imposed, like based on some formula that we...
Yes, the formula is, in the code, 1 per 4 units total, plus staff. So, again, 1 plus 4 units, we really only need 25 parking spaces. They currently have 25. You add staff of about 20, that's about 45. I think we're at 68 as a total. Check that. So we should be well parked. Again, the impact as far as the square footage is concerned is fairly low.
I'm thinking I'm thinking possibly there are too many spaces. Is it possible to have fewer spaces?
Certainly is.
I mean, I would just, advise that you have the minimum number that you think you'd ever need, since most of the people probably are not driving.
They're not.
As long as you're meeting our minimum requirements, unless you're expecting to have large events, I would hope that we could do it with as few spaces as possible.
Okay. We can certainly do that.
If they change the site plan to reduce the number of parking spaces, does it have to come back to this council? Y'all can do that at staff level. Good. Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Mr. DiPolito may be about to say the same thing, but if we were able to reduce the parking, then we could hopefully allow some of the things you were talking about to save some trees. So some of those big ones along some of those pieces, if you think that's possible.
We'll certainly look at that and try to reduce that number of parking spaces and see if we can save any of those trees. Again, if you go by the site, you can appreciate the fact all those rings begin to touch. It's quite a challenge. Again, not that we can't do it, but we would certainly try.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I was actually just going to make that very comment, so you're right. On the western portion of the property, where you have 10 spaces, there's a couple of trees. There's looks like a 23-inch oak and a 26-inch oak that are impacted by those 10 spaces. So if we could eliminate a few there, that may be enough to have minimal impact on those trees, which saves you money as well. So
sure. And I think what we'd like to do is, again, work with the arborist on a plan that they feel works as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? You'll have an opportunity for rebuttal after public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? I see no need for a rebuttal because I saw no public comment. Do we have a motion?
Good.
Can I make one comment for
Yes,
Ms.
sir.
Lyman, that it is related to those number of parking spaces. Do we need to allow that as an option to reduce it if it's under the, is this 68, the required number? From following your question.
I mean, back to this body are getting approval, they can reduce as long as they do not go below the required number of spaces.
What is that? Do you know what that is? What is that required number?
Well, the code simply says 1 per 4 units plus staff.
Right, and what is
I
that
mean,
number?
so...
Well, they have with the new addition would be 100 units, so that would be 25 parking spaces they would need for the beds.
Right.
Plus staff, and there doesn't really indicate that. So if that's the 1 per 4, the max is 1 per 3. And that would be 33 parking spaces. So they're proposing an additional 44 to bring them up to 68. So if they drop them down to, if they drop 10 or 15 spaces, they'll be fine.
So the bottom line, we don't have to make any specific change on that. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments before we entertain a motion? Do we have a motion?
I'd like to move to approve a resolution to grant approval for the property contained on the 5.94 acres of the requested rezoning and conditional use with concurrent variances to allow for assisted living facility with the following conditions. The owner-developer should develop the property in accordance with the site plan stamped received May 7th, 2013. And number 2, a combination plat for the 2 parcels should be completed and recorded prior to the issuance of the land disturbance permit. And number 3, the applicant will tie in a sidewalk from the Holcomb Bridge Road sidewalk through the parking lot to connect to the building.
Just so we're clear, the striping would be enough to make that sidewalk tie?
Yes, that is clear.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the... Yes, Councilmember DiPolito.
Just a question. Do we need to clarify in conditions the potential saving of trees and removal of parking spaces? Is that I guess to be approved or coordinated with staff?
We will do that based on the conversation here as part of the public record, and we'll make sure that that occurs.
Okay, so that doesn't need to be an additional condition?
I mean, we'll take care of it, but if the council's more comfortable with making that as part of the condition, that's fine.
Yeah, I'd like to propose an amendment to add a condition number 4 for the applicant to review the potential saving of trees and by removing some of the parking spaces to be reviewed with the staff and approved by the staff.
Would that be, just for clarification, that's a fairly vague amendment. So for the purposes of this would be, as approved by staff, and it would be in staff's discretion what they approved.
That would be my recommendation, yes.
So is that clear enough for staff?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion to make this condition upon staff's reviewing a reduction of parking and that reduction being in staff's discretion. Councilmember Orleans.
I think we've already established that the minimum number of spaces needed is, I think, 44, 45, and they've got 68 on there. And I think Councilman Diamond was asking the client about what they could come down, and we're talking 10 to 15 coming down. I don't know that we need to try to clarify it with
No, we're not trying
conditions.
to put a specific number on it. We're trying to give staff discretion as to what that would be based upon the arborist review and the site. So it's leaving staff flexibility to encourage the applicant to save money in trees.
Can do.
So we have a motion and did we get a second to that motion? We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Becky Wynn seconds it. Any further discussion on we're going to be voting on the amendment first. Any discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, raise their hands. That passes unanimously. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is rezoning RZ 1205, CV 1202, 12160 Etris Road, EAH Investments, Land Lot 1236. Ms. Wakefield?
Okay. This is a request from the applicant to rezone the property, 16.69 acres of property along Etris Road and Kent Road at intersection from an R1 to an R1 and R2, and the development of a single-family development of 27 lots. I'm going to show you a series of maps right now. This is a location map showing the location of the property that's outlined in red. This is the future development map, which calls for suburban residential. Then you have the zoning map. This is an FCA Fulton County zoning. This is an aerial. It's a heavily wooded site currently. And this, you see a series of the list here that shows those properties that surround this property. And you have quite a few of FCA's Fulton County zonings. It's surrounded to the north by single-family residential on large tracts of land. To the south, you have the Wexford subdivision. To the east, you have Edenwald, and to the west, you have Hamilton Commons. This property was zoned back in August by mayor and council to the R1 zoning district. The applicant filed a lawsuit within the 30 days as required by state law. The applicant has, since the filing of that lawsuit, been working with some of the property owners to work out an agreement and come up with a settlement. That is what is before you tonight. This is a layout of the 27-lot settlement. What you have here is that to the, I guess that's the east side, you have along Edenwald, you have they're maintaining the 3 lots. That's the section in which they're asking that be zoned for the R1 district. Then across Etris, the lots here would be R2. The zoning district for the R2 is a 12,000 square foot lot, but along the subdivision, along here, the applicant is proposing 18,000 square foot lots. What has been submitted to you has been the backup materials, including the agreement with the community that includes 29 conditions, along with some additional requirements that will be included in the HOA covenants. The applicant is also agreed that on item number 11 is part of the covenant that Edenwald would be added to that. That's basically for a cost that would go toward a penalty cost that would go toward encroachments into the buffer. The recommendation of staff is approval of the revised site plan for RZ 12-05 and the CV 12-02. That is the concurrent variance. The concurrent variance is to the front yard setback, and that is an internal setback for the structures with the 29 conditions. The Planning Commission recommendation was this item be moved forward to mayor and council with no recommendations. With that said, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have a question for the city attorney. Ms. Wakefield referred to this as a settlement. This isn't a court-ordered settlement. This is just an offering essentially by the applicant to withdraw their lawsuit if this is approved. Is that correct?
Through discussions by email with the applicant, basically, they've agreed to dismiss the lawsuit if this zoning is approved, yes.
Okay, so
it's not a court order. This would be just a mutual settlement.
Okay, so it's a mutual agreement. All right. Thank you. Ms. Wakefield, on condition number 12, There is a requirement for the developer to build out a stub-out street. It mentions to the property line, but the plat actually shows that stub-out going currently to the setback line, which
To
is
the
30
setback
feet.
line,
and
yes,
that was
sir.
a request of the adjoining property owner. So I was wondering if that was just inadvertently left in condition number 12. Shouldn't that be within 30 feet of the property line?
Well, the condition number 12 is the condition, and I think that's something that's supported by the Department of Transportation, because we often run into a situation where subdivisions are built out and they stub the street, they don't stub the street all the way to the property line, so the abutting neighbors are under the impression that that road's never going to go through, and that becomes their green space. We believe, and apparently based on this agreement, there's a belief that if you stub it out, then the property that's adjacent, when and if it comes through for development, then it will be connect through that stub. And I am not aware if that's something that the abutting property owner has a problem with, or any of the.
I know he had a request to have a 30-foot setback, and I would imagine cutting down the trees to put in that stub out would be inconsistent with what he requested. Plus, it's inconsistent with the plat, so I guess we need to figure that out. I don't know if the adjacent property owner is here tonight.
Well, you know, the plat that's before you is more of a concept. It's not the preliminary plat, which would have to show all the improvements based on the conditions that are agreed upon or that are approved tonight. We will then take those conditions and we will review them based on the land disturbance, the subdivision plat that's submitted, and the conditions of the approval, and make sure that they are adhered to. It's not often that the plat that's presented at the time of zoning is not 100% in sync with the conditions, and that is the situation here.
Okay. I would like to hear more from the applicant on that.
Yes, sir.
And I don't see the adjacent property owner in the audience, but if they're here, I'd like to hear from them as well regarding that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious about the access to Kent Road. So there really isn't ingress and egress from that. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
There is or is not ingress and egress onto Kent Road?
What is being proposed is that be an emergency access to Kent Road. I believe and Transportation can speak to this, that Transportation may have some concerns about that not being a full access, but I would rather rely on Steve to answer that question. But as proposed now, the proposal that is presented by the applicant is that be an emergency access.
Is that desired by the applicant, or is that something we've decided needed to be?
That is what is before you is what was part of the agreement with the applicant and his discussion and negotiation with the property owners in the area.
Okay, so this is a mutual desire
from those two parties.
Okay. Is that agree? Do we have Steve? Would Steve like to comment on that?
Thank you. I'd like to non-concur.
Sorry, I asked.
Well, we believe that the access to Kent Road should be full access and not fire only. We think it ought to be a full access.
Is it paved at that point?
It is not, is my understanding, but we believe it should be.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant? We'll hear from the applicant now. The applicant. We'll hear from the property owner.
Good evening.
council members. I'm Paul Corley. I'm the CEO of Edward Anders Homes, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight. Little history on the project. Obviously, we came in and had applied originally for an R3A site plan that included 44 homes and on smaller lots. We revised the plan to 38 lots. We were ultimately zoned for 22 lots, which did not allow us to kind of go forward with our vision for the project, which was not only to be the developer, but to be the builder of the homes in the community. We've always envisioned in this location that this community would be of a very high quality with homes in the $400,000 and $500,000 price range. When we were zoned for the 22 units, we had some discussions after that with several of the council members, and I think the thing that was forgot in the whole process, or that was not really looked at, was really what the quality of the development was going to be. For example, your square footage minimum and your requirement for R1, which seemed to be the big sticking point, was lot size is 1,500 square feet. I've offered to increase that to 2,600 square feet. So the whole thing, the evolution of this, and I want to thank the staff, and I want to thank Nancy Diamond and several of the council members for taking the time, as well as with representatives from Wexford, representatives from Edenwild, representatives from Hamilton Commons. This has been a very long, drawn-out process where we have worked with these groups to try and come up with a plan that, yes, we are increasing the lots. We're asking to go from 22 to 27. Okay, so the original plan was at 44, and then we revised it to 38. We were zoned for 22, and we've asked for 27. In return for that, what we've done is we've offered 29 conditions that increase square footage, pretty much guarantee a higher quality home in terms of architecture. We've offered 13 conditions in terms of what will be conditioned in the HOA docs. We've offered landscape buffers to the adjacent communities. So if you can envision on the site plan, the pie-shaped lot that backs up to Hamilton Commons, yes, that was it is an R1 lot now. It was zoned R1, but it now also includes a landscaped living fence. We included a design plan on the entrance along Etris. We included a design landscape plan along Kent Road. We included a pocket park, small pocket park inside the community. So what you really have before you is a plan that we have spent months working with your city council, working with staff, and working with as many. I'm sure we didn't touch all the neighbors, and if that's the case, I apologize, but as many of the neighbors to try and satisfy their vision for the area, and also allow us to build and develop a community that I think everybody will be proud of when it's completed. If I could, if you'll look at under the conditions, you can see, I'll highlight what I think some things that are very important. A maximum of 27 homes and lots. You can see where we increase the square footage minimum from 1,500 square feet to 2,600 square feet. On number 6, the landscaping plan that BNC Studio did is a very nice landscaping plan addressing the frontage along Etris and the frontage along Kent Road. On number 9, we work with transportation on the sidewalk plan out front. We're dedicating right-of-way on number 10. Number 19 talks about the landscaping and fencing plan to go before Design Review Board and also behind the specific lots. All of our ponds, obviously, we've provided plans for and have to meet City of Roswell requirements. We have a 30-foot buffer along Hamilton Commons and a 35-foot buffer along Edenwild. condition number 23, and I think there's pictures in your before you tonight. We are basically planting a living fence with mature trees to buffer the neighbors where we directly abut. On number 25, the new plan also does include a small pocket park. There was a request on the maintenance bond that it be increased to 3 years. It has been. And if you will look under the Homeowners Association documents, and these aren't things, from what I understand legally, cannot be a zoning stipulation, but I can be mandated to put these in HOA docs so that if I were not here tomorrow, these are in the HOA docs that are recorded in our legal document. And as you can see, 50% of the homes will have a sidecar entry garage. 50% of the homes will be a basement. Will be on basement. A mix of brick, stone, and hardy plank siding. Number 4, if you don't understand that, it says there will be no exposed concrete on the sides of the homes. All the water tables will be brick or stone. If you can envision a basement house on the side of the house, a lot of builders do not pay attention to that. They'll leave it exposed concrete. We're going to spend the expense to make them brick or stone. 9-foot ceilings, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, architectural shingles. I won't keep going through this, but the whole purpose was to try and give the council and to try and give the neighbors a sense of our commitment to this development, that we intended for it to be high quality from day one. We're putting it in writing that it will be. I certainly am not proud of how the zoning started. I think there was a lot of confusion due to the R3A. But what's before you today is a revised plan with 5 more homes, 29 conditions, and 13 regulations that go in the HOA docs, which will result in a community that I think everyone in the area will be proud of, and the homes will certainly be consistent with the area. Our lot sizes are a mix of, as Alice said, a mix of R2 on the interior, but all the exterior lots are R1. And from staff report, you can see there is a mix of R2 size lots and R1 size lots all around us. So we are very consistent from a lot size standpoint, but with assurances that the community will be much higher quality. If I could, I'll take a moment to address Kent Road and my understanding of it. Certainly, as Steve said, Transportation had asked that there be an entrance off of Kent Road. I think there was a lot of pushback from the neighborhood that they did not want to see Kent Road with an access point off of Kent. I can't say that either way. I was for it either way. We've got a main entrance on Etris, but where it ended up with, due to the neighbors' concerns, was that it would not be an entrance on Kent Road, but for ingress and egress and public safety standpoint, we provided a breakaway gate. Councilman DiPolito, the adjacent neighbor who's been great to work with, he actually was opposed to any type of connectivity to his property. He didn't feel, and I certainly understand from a planning and a design standpoint, City of Roswell's desire to have connectivity. He's got about a 2-acre piece of property. He did not want that. I'm not sure. I think we do show a side setback that's 30 feet. I cannot read that up there right now. But I have met with him several times. We do have a side setback. What's being required is connectivity with a sign that says that this could eventually be connected if in sometime in the future. But I will work with the neighbor. We've got a setback. I've told him I work with him on landscaping along the side. But he didn't really want it to be connected.
Does the council have any questions for the developer? Thank you, sir.
Yep.
We'll hear from the public next, and then we'll give. If there's anything else that comes up, we may want to call you back again.
I would like to. Thank you.
I have a question. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. A couple technical questions actually for staff. This is going to be zoned a combination of R1 and R2. So how does that work? Is a portion of the property R1, or how does that break out?
Yes, sir. A portion of the property would be zoned R1. That's the portion where you have the 3 lots, and then there's a stream coming in and a buffer. And then there is the remaining lots will be zoned R2, but it would be conditioned such that those lots that abuts the subdivision will be 18,000 square foot.
Good. So the lots, the 3 lots, I guess on the top of this site plan, along with that, it looks like a large lot. It's actually mostly stream buffer.
Yes, sir.
That's not a 4th lot. So that will be pretty much untouched.
Yes, sir. This will be. This portion will be zoned R1. This portion here will be zoned R2, but all of these lots right here down on this property line will be conditioned to 18,000 square foot lots.
Okay, thank you. My other question has to do with the conditions, and we have conditions in the resolution. Then we have conditions that were put together in a memo from Brad Townsend.
Yes, sir.
Then we have final settlement conditions that appear to be from the applicant. And I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the conditions in the resolution condense all of those into one convenient location?
Well, the condition in the resolution, we list all 29 conditions. The only thing that staff changed from what was presented as part of the final settlement was on the last page, condition number 21, where it said the northern property line, that should be the west property line, and condition 23, where it says Nellie Stevens Magnolias, should be Nellie R. Stevens Holly. And those are the only changes that we made to what was submitted by the applicant.
Okay, thank you. And the requirements to be included in the homeowner documents, how is that part of this approval? Should it be?
Those are not items that the city can enforce. What they will become part of the homeowner's covenants, and at the time before the applicant gets his land disturbance permit as part of his preliminary plat process, he will submit that document to the city for our records.
So we do not have that as a condition, but as part of this public hearing, it's known?
Yes, sir. It's part of the records. I mean, for example, if someone has a problem that they go into one of the units and there is not stainless steel appliances, that would be the homeowners association ability to take their own legal action for that.
Okay. I'm a little less concerned about the interior of the house, but there's a lot of exterior items. All right, so condition number 16 then references the HOA documents, and I guess it's implied then that this list that was included under the settlement document lists those requirements?
Yes, sir. That reference, that document, and that document will be presented as part of that final plat process.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to address the access to Kent Road. I can understand the concern about having a paved road accessing a dirt road and perhaps making it a emergency access only. On the other hand, I can remember when Holcomb Bridge Road was a dirt road. And over time, conditions change, especially if you look at a number of years. So I could support this if we said that as long as this remains a dirt road, it was emergency access only. But if this road sometime in the indefinite future is paved, I think it would be appropriate to make this connection. and I don't want a future council to have to face that question of, do we open this road up again and once it's paved? Because once conditions are changed, and that may be never, and it may be 50 years from now, but I expect, given my experience, one day this road may be paved. And so I would like this council to consider saying that to go ahead and make sure that this is dedicated to the public, and make sure that the curb and gutter and the pavement is installed, so one day that when this road, if this road is paved, it's not a matter of coming back to council for approval, but simply a matter of the council saying, well, that prior council said it was emergency access only until it was paved. Now it's paved, it automatically comes down. I'd like you all to consider that. At this time, we'll hear from the public. If you have any questions or comments, please come forward. If you'll give us your name and address, please, before you speak. And we have a 5-minute time limit.
Good evening. My name is Darren Horvath. I live at 376 Kent Road. I want to thank Mr. Corley for all the cooperation he has shown to get this project to this point. But I will say that on behalf of many of my neighbors, I do not like the idea of having this open and have open access onto Kent Road, or even make it conditioned on whether it's paved and it automatically opens into Kent Road. There's lots of neighborhoods in the city of Roswell with a lot more houses in this project that have cul-de-sacs or dead ends or whatever you want to call them that do not have any access to another road. And yet here, for some reason, we're going to have access from this little loop from Kent Road, or from Etris Road onto Kent Road, in a neighborhood that only has, 20-something houses in it, 24 houses. I think it's unnecessary. I don't think it's even close to what we've seen in other parts of Roswell. For example, Brookfield West, which is nearby, has many, many houses in it. They have a breakaway gate similar to this that's right along Cox Road. There's never been access there. It's been a breakaway gate there the entire time, and in order to get to that area, you have to drive all the way out and come out on either King Road or out another entrance onto Hardscrabble. And there's no need for this. The other problem, it's the safety concern. Kent Road has had a rash of accidents on a little dirt road. There's people who drive extremely fast on that. There's a lot of issues on that road, and I think it provides a false sense of security. If this neighborhood develops into what it's believed to be, kids are going to be riding their bikes on there, and it's going to give them a false sense of security to ride out on that road. And I think with a gate, you don't have that issue. You take the gate away, you have that issue. There's been at least 2 or 3 rollovers right in that area since I've lived there in 8 years. And I would ask that this council take serious consideration, not approve this with any access to Kent Road except for the breakaway gate as required for fire safety. Thank you.
Yes, come forward, please.
My name is Barbara Hampton. I live at 360 Kent Road. I just have a little bit of an issue with, if you remember, how many people showed up the first time around with this particular zoning. Everyone is very passionate about what the conditions were, and we feel like we've reached a negotiated settlement. And to have something change at the last minute for the smallest group really seems disingenuous to the whole process. I too want to thank Mr. Corley for his cooperation. We feel like this is a good compromise between not having any access at all and having access for what's required for emergency purposes. So I would ask you to consider that a lot of folks came together on this, and to change it without all parties knowing it would be disingenuous to the process. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to comment? Public hearing's closed. I don't think we need any rebuttal to any of that. Councilmember Price, do you have any comments before we entertain a motion?
Just the details of the lawsuit, and where we are to date, and what has that cost the city, et cetera, and is it immediately dismissed if this were approved?
I was going to defer that to...
They filed suit, we filed an answer, it's cost the city nothing so far. It's all been handled in-house, so.
Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Also a question for Mr. Davidson that on number 15, condition 15, talks about the open space shall be listed in the HOA covenants related to the maintenance. And in the Planning Commission minutes, it talks a great deal about all that kind of thing and whether or not that should be deeded to the HOA to make it more of a legal property for them. Does 15 deal with that, or is it just out there to be hopefully dealt with?
We require for detention ponds for them to file stuff and record stuff that, like the homeowners association, and this is the same thing that would be required. Okay. So it'll be on record that they're maintaining.
All right. So in other words, it does deal with that.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have a clarification when you were talking about Kent Road.
Yes.
My understanding is that you're not saying to do full access now, but only when Kent Road becomes a paved road. Am I correct?
If and when it became a paved road, the conditions would have changed to the point that I think that should be public access.
But you're not saying now, you're saying if and when Kent Road, and then it would still be up to the council at that time to consider?
No. In my mind, it would be if this road is paved, Kent Road is paved.
Okay.
It would be automatically then become public access. Having grown up in this town, one of the worst mistakes we made was a dead-end cul-de-sac mentality. We are now trying to reverse that to create connectivity. And I believe conditions have changed from when Brookfield West was built and when Martin's Landing was built, and the need for connectivity is recognized. And we need to recognize in the future that if there is the possibility for connectivity and this road is paved, and the reasons for not creating a connection disappear, which is if it's paved. So it would be if and when, but only if and when, it then becomes public access.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councilmember Price.
Yeah, I know that a number of homeowners on Kent Road have been interested in having it paved, so the possibility of that happening could be imminent. Who knows exactly when that might happen? I just think that at such time it ought to be dealt with then and not as part of today's discussion.
Further discussion before we entertain a motion. Do we have a motion? Councilman DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment. I wanted to applaud Nancy Diamond and Mr. Corley. So many homeowners and homeowner associations that came together to work on this. I know there were hundreds of man-hours spent on this, so it's a very long road, and it's a good outcome from the fact that people came together, worked together, came up with a solution that worked for everybody. And I think we're down to one issue, whether we have a breakaway gate or not. And considering where we've come from, that's a tremendous achievement. And that was just something new tonight. Personally, I like the idea of just solving the issue now. However, there has been a lot of discussion about whether this is a breakaway gate or not. And I'd have a hard time at the last minute reversing that on the homeowners who worked so hard to get us to this point. And like I said, there's been a tremendous amount of effort. I want to thank each and every person who spent time on this. It's been a lot of long hours, and thank you.
Councilmember DiPolito, I do support it being a breakaway gate. So I do support that today. I'm talking about in the future. If this road is paved, that's what I'm talking about. So I'd support the current settlement. But I think we need to add to that current settlement that if this road is paved, then it needs to become public access. Unless the council at that time determines it's appropriate to keep it closed. The council can say it's appropriate to keep it closed, but I think it's appropriate to say it's a breakaway gate now. If it's paved, it ceases to be a breakaway gate unless the council chooses to reverse that position. Councilmember Orleans.
I, too, would like to, the last time this was here, I expressed some concerns at the end of the meeting, and I would like to congratulate Paul Corley and all of the residents and the homeowners board members that came together. It's come a long way from our very first meeting that we had, and so I just want to applaud everybody for their involvement in trying to work through this, and I think we'll have a lot better project. Thank you.
Any further comments before we entertain a motion? Do we have a motion?
I'm going to throw my comments in too. There's been some discussion about this being a lawsuit, and I think we verified before we had the discussions that at that point the lawsuit was not in the picture. I mean, I think for legal expediency, we want to make sure that there is no lawsuit at the end of this process, but that was not the impetus for doing this. This was truly the developer and the neighbors coming together to see if they could find a better solution for everybody. And I hope I've thanked everybody enough, but it has been a lot of fun. Sometimes after rezonings, there's not a lot of love, and that's very normal. But it's been a wonderful process, and it's a very impressive group that lives out there, and it's been wonderful to get to know people. My impression of the Kent Road breakaway gate issue is not so much that it's a dirt road, it's that it's an access issue and a safety issue, and whether it's paved or not really doesn't, I don't think, figure into it, and I think I'd feel more comfortable if we had that discussion in the presence of all of the affected neighbors in that area before we did that. We held our own little legal meeting and decided we didn't need to list all the conditions, but I'll check with legal if you need. Do I need to read them all into the record, or?
No, you can just refer to the list.
Okay. I would like to move to approve a resolution that Mayor and Council grant approval for the property located at Land Lot 1236 of the 1st District, 2nd Section for rezoning with concurrent variances to allow for 27 single-family homes per case RZ 1205 and CV 1202 located at Idris Road and Kent Road, with the conditions referenced by staff. Got a few changes here to number 12. The owner-developer shall have the connectivity to the parcel located to the north, or is it west? We changed one to west. It is north. Okay. To the north on the tract on one side of the property for future development. The developer shall completely build to the stub-out street to the 30-foot buffer line to be finished prior to the final plat. On number 16, the Homeowners Association documents, including items 113 and the settlement documents, must be recorded in conjunction with the final plat and prior to the issuance of the first single-family home building permit. And to reference that, on number 11 on the homeowner documents, it says EAH investments will include a provision in the homeowner's documents outlining the 30-foot wide buffer abutting Hamilton Commons, and I need to add, and the 35-foot buffer abutting Edenwild is a natural buffer and must not be disturbed. The HOA documents will include a provision establishing $2,500 penalty if the buffer is disturbed. I think that's it.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Everybody lived on a cul-de-sac. We couldn't get anywhere.
Okay, the next item, I believe, is SB 201-300-500. That's 900 Myrtle Street, AEC, Stephen Rowe, presented by Jackie Dybel.
Yes, this property is located at 900 Myrtle Street. It is bounded by myrtle and forest on either side. As you can see from the aerial, there is a pipe located on the northwestern portion of the property that goes off from the city property, the back portion of the city property, onto this property here. There's a closer up view here for you. The applicant is proposing to redirect the pipe down to the stream that's along on the southern property line. The stream buffer variance, as shown on the plan, the applicant is requesting a stream buffer variance to the entire 50-foot undisturbed buffer and 75-foot impervious setback for, basically to the impervious setback to allow for the single-family home development that they're proposing. They have requested the variance with the state, the EPD. We have heard back from the state. They are currently in review of the proposal. The variance will allow for the applicant to approve the vegetation which is located within the buffer and which will then in turn help improve the condition of the creek. I have spoken with both the city engineer and the water resources engineer. They have both been out to the site. They have both walked it, looked at the creek and the condition of the vegetation. They have both recommended approval of this variance request with the following two conditions. The condition number 1, which is a stabilization and stream bank and stabilization plan using the guidance level 1 techniques, and provide analysis for stream bank stabilization. The staff recommends approval of the stream buffer variance request with these two conditions, which came from the city engineer and the stormwater water resources engineer. Do you have any questions for staff?
Any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Ms. Dybel, so the variance is to eliminate the stream buffer altogether?
Correct.
Because there'll no longer be a stream there once it's piped?
Correct.
Okay. So if they don't get approval from the state, what happens?
That's a good question.
If they don't get approval from the state, then they're not going to be able to develop this development as proposed. They would, and the applicant is here, they would have to either walk away from the development or redesign it that works around the state buffer.
I think it's reasonable to eliminate the buffer if the pipe is relocated, but I think we would need to make the approval contingent on approval from the state.
Yes.
Because
you can do
if that doesn't occur, then the situation changes, and the applicant, I guess, could speak to that.
Yes.
You have a site plan for this whole thing. Other questions? I'm just trying to get a little bigger idea of what's going on this site other than this swale. If y'all could give me an overall view of this development so I can put it in perspective.
Mayor and Council, I'm Dave Schmidt, and the developer for the property. Let me show this, Alice, if I could. That's the proposed site plan that, if you look at the entrance coming off of Myrtle Street, that's right across the street from the Zion Church.
Could you zoom in on that, please?
Sorry?
Could you zoom in on that, please, so we can see a little better? I think Jackie can help you.
I'm not good at this. Not the best, but not bad.
Keep going. Keep doing it. Get it so we can see it.
Oh, that's much better.
All right, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Well, I'll back up here. This is the first opportunity we have to develop with a form-based code. So if you remember, this is in that area, and so the site plan has been set in conformance with the code. We've reviewed it with community development going forward, and you'll see in these there's 21 houses. Those are 40-foot wide lots, about 30-foot wide houses, all in a cottage-style product. In fact, Lou Oliver's involved in the design of the product. And lots 1 through 6 and 11 through 18 face out to the road. So you'll see porches along Myrtle, porches along Forest, and the entrance to the garages are from the rear. So once you enter in from the side on Myrtle Street, you would move into the back side of 1 through 6 and the back of 11 through 18, and then 7 through 10 and 19 through 21 face an interior park area. And that's the little area around the center there where garages will face there, but you won't pick up any of that view from the public road. So the issue with the stream buffer variance is there's a line that runs through. You can see where the current pond is, and actually the main pond will be down at the corner nearest the church. That would be on the east and south portion of the property. And so we'll have to do some water quality, and they haven't designed that in detail now, in the center portion of the property, but most of the water would be detained in that southeast corner. And we're simply routing the pipe around so that we can open up that area for further development. The reality of it, if you've seen the stream, that stream is essentially a man-made ditch, if we want to call it that. The southern bank and the eastern bank were built when the city hall was constructed here, and the pipe was run through there during that time, and dirt was placed to create those banks. So those are not natural banks. And consequently, if you look at what's down in the bottom of that ditch, if you want to call it that, I think we can greatly improve the environmental conditions on that site, because right now there's a lot of deteriorated conditions, and it really isn't a stream as we would think of it in terms of what we want to preserve. So by routing it around, everything else in the site can be cleaned up. The water that's going to go onto the site and then leave the site will be far cleaner than what's happening today.
All right, just to explain some more about this site, between Lot 13 and 14, what does that show?
We've got a little pedestrian access to get out to the road.
Is that going to be available for the public to cut through there if they want to walk?
Can be, sure.
And is that suitable for bicycles?
Probably be a little narrow for bicycles, but we can certainly look at it, whether we can widen it up enough to get there. We haven't got to that level of design with this at the stream buffer variance level.
I encourage you to look at that. Bicycles don't necessarily have to be road bikers flying through there, but given the neighborhood, that would be very attractive for people to not have to go all the way out to a paved road to get back to another road.
Absolutely, sure.
To get away from that cul-de-sac dead-end mentality, even if it's just for bicycles and people, they need shortcuts even more than cars do.
We'd support that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, could you address the question of what happens if you don't get approval from the state? I assume you will, but how does that change your plan?
If we don't get the approval of the state, we don't buy the property.
Okay.
So it kills the development. Right. So it can be contingent by this council or if we don't get it, it's not going anywhere. So the Corps has approved it already.
Okay. So if we made it, the Corps has approved it?
They have. But the state, EPD, has not approved it yet.
Okay.
There's three levels of approval here: the Corps, the state, and the city. All three have to.
All right. But so you'd be okay with us conditioning it to the state approval?
Yes.
Because it's not going to impact you anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Councilmember Eichelhardt.
This technically is probably a question for staff, but given what you just said, I think Mr. Schmidt probably has the best answer. If you move the stream to that side, does that create a buffer requirement for the other properties that are now to the, which side is that? The math is everybody else on the side. Or is that, if you get the EPD variant, that also then wipes that out for either side?
Well, what happens is and Steve may be able to speak to this a little bit, but once we go from lot 14 south to 18 to the edge, and then start to go to the east, when we open up the pipe, and we're only allotted for 200 feet, about 200 feet of piping allowed by our application to the state. Once that opens up, then the buffering has to hit back again, and we have to open up. And once we're in that area, we're going to be away from the houses and away from the other areas.
And so it does not then impact the properties to the side of this because of the new stream?
No, there's not going to be no development on that side anyway, so their buffer would basically be the same as it is now.
Well, today. But
they still have that buffer. There's a creek that runs down the southern property line right now. There's actually two creeks on the property. One is the one that traverses, the one we're talking about, the large pipe, and then there's a small one that runs along the southern edge. And so that's still going to be there, so they have that condition today. We're going to pipe a portion of it, which actually would give them less buffer, but when it opens up again, same condition exists as it is today.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Do we have anyone in the audience who has any questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the audience? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve stream buffer variance conditional upon the approval of the State Environmental Protection Department.
Motion for approval with a condition. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is RZ 1210, text amendment to section 15.4.1 of the City of Roswell zoning ordinance regarding the exclusion of single-family and duplex residential lots from minimum tree density requirements contained in Article 15, tree protection. This is the second reading.
It's the second reading. This is a request to amend the zoning ordinance as relates to tree density on single-family and duplex lots that exceed 1 acre. This amendment will allow staff the flexibility, the planning director, to work with those applicants that come in for permits for residential lots that have been basically vacant without any trees for over 10 years. Currently, the way the ordinance is that if you are more than an acre, you have to abide by the tree density requirement, which can be quite cumbersome and costly. This is supported by the arborists. In fact, it was the arborist's suggestion that we provide some relief for those builders, home builders. With that said, staff's recommendation is approval of the second reading.
Mr. Davidson, if you'd read it for a second time.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Section 15.4.1 of the City of Roswell zoning ordinance regarding the exclusion of single-family and duplex residential lots of any size from minimum tree density requirements contained in Article 15, tree protection. City of now therefore, pursuant to their authority, the mayor and city council adopt the following ordinance. City of Roswell zoning ordinance is hereby amended in Article 15, tree protection of the zoning ordinance, Chapter 15.4.1, minimum tree density requirements, as to read as follows. Text which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Any questions? Do we have a motion? Council, we got a question back here. Councilman Eichelhardt.
How does someone prove they haven't had trees there for 10 years?
Well, the beauty of that is that we have aerial photography. So we can go back to many years to prove what that lot was like for the last 10 years. So it's not that we would, not be able to prove that the lot was, there was no trees on the lots. We can pull up the aerial photography and verify that.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Price.
Is there any part of this that relates to redevelopment, or in our comprehensive plan, do we have any areas going from commercial to residential?
That could conceivably happen, but not that I'm aware of. Usually if something's going from commercial to residential, it's going to be very high, dense residential, because usually commercial property, the cost factor into that. But I'm not aware of that. We don't have anything in the comp plan where we're taking residential property, or taking commercial property and converting it and suggesting that it becomes a residential.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve second reading.
Motion to approve the second reading by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is approval of an appeal to Article 7.1, Standard Construction Specifications, Section 2.1.6A of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. This is
Yes, the applicant was asking, or is asking, to appeal that section of Article 7.1 of the Standard Construction Specification to allow a second curb cut. We received a request from the applicant for this matter to be deferred until the April 22nd Mayor and Council meeting.
Do we have a motion for deferral?
Move to defer to April 22nd.
Motion by Councilmember Diamond for deferral. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments about this motion for deferral? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is approval of an amendment to the fee schedule to clarify the fees for land disturbance permits for single-family lots and other minor wording changes.
This is the first reading of a request to amend the, actually it's a resolution, so it's a request to approve a resolution amending the fee schedule as it relates primarily to land disturbance permit. It's basically requiring to clarify the fee for single-family lots that will only be $50, and that for land disturbance of property that are 1 acre, that it becomes $125 as opposed to the $250. There was a great gap between the $50 and the $250. So we're just asking for that amendment to the fee schedule. We're also asking for those minor wording changes in the document.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Mr. Davis, does that need a reading of the ordinance? We have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is approval of an amendment to Chapter 5, Building and Construction, Section 5.3.1A, Building and Technical Codes of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. This will be first reading.
Yes, as was mentioned, this is the first reading of an amendment to Chapter 5, Building and Construction Code to adopt the National Green Building Standards. As indicated in the draft code, this is voluntary for those applicants seeking green certification. We're asking for this first reading to be approved and moved to the April 22nd meeting. The intent is to have this document adopted and approved by mayor and council so that it will count toward the city's green recertification with ARC. And I would like to point out that if anyone wants to build green in the city, this is the ordinance that they would have to abide by, whether the mayor and council adopts it or not. It's a state code, but it's a code that's voluntary, only if you want to build green.
Mr. Davidson, would you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 5, Building and Construction, Section 5.3.1A of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. Now therefore be it ordained by the Mayor and City Council, pursuant to their authority, they hereby adopt the following ordinance. Article 5.3.1A, Building and Technical Codes, adopted by reference of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances, is hereby amended by adding the following to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this be the first reading.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve first reading.
Motion by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That is Councilman Orleans, Councilman Eichelhart, Councilman Wynn, Councilman DiPolito, and Councilman Diamond in favor. All opposed. Councilmember Price. Passes 5-1. I have encouraged community development to look into incentives. Now that we've passed this, not penalties, but incentives if you do meet this, to encourage people to build green in Roswell. Next item, please.
Approval of the Tree Care Planting and Replacement Master Plan 2004 to 2014.
This is a request to approve the Tree Care Planting and Replacement Master Plan. Basically, we're extending the plan from 2002 to 2014. This plan was first approved back in 2004. Because of the drought, it was extended to 2008, then it was extended again to 2012. As you can see on the overhead, we have completed quite a few replacement plantings. We're down to the final 3. And staff will come back to mayor and council for probably a new plan next year in terms of tree plantings. Staff recommendations approval.
Do we have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Diamond for approval. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Price. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. I had some questions in committee I was hoping maybe answered by now for the Canton Street tree replacement. Do we know which trees those are and where the locations are?
I'm sorry, no, sir. I went back to the arborist and sort of focused on the Midtown, but I can get that to you and send that out to you tomorrow.
Okay. What about the Midtown streetscape?
The Midtown streetscape is for the replacement of those trees that have either died or are too small that was part of the Midtown project. Staff has not moved forward with that. What we will have to do, because the amount exceeds the amount that's available in the fund right now, we would have to get with transportation, work up a new plan to see what trees need to be replaced, and we can bring that back to Mayor and Council for consideration.
Alice Wakefield, this is a master plan. Will these specific projects come back to council for approval before they go forward?
If we have the funding there. I mean, items 1 through 35 have already been taken place.
Just a suggestion.
Yes,
I think
yes,
it
sir.
would be appropriate before expenditures are made to come to committee for guidance.
Yes, sir. We'll do that.
I had another question for you. With respect to the Midtown trees, we had, some of those trees are only about a year old, are they not? Or has it been 2 years? Shouldn't they be under warranty if they've died? So this is only for replacing some of the smaller ones with larger ones?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Eisenbrack is nodding his head. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We're on to Councilmember Betty Price, liaison to the Transportation Department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item, number 13, is approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a construction contract with R.J. Haney & Associates for the Holcomb Bridge Road, State Road 92 ATMS, or Advanced Traffic Management System, construction project in the amount of $1,714,222.55. And seeing as this was something that I actually ran on in 2009, I'm excited to see it nearing its completion. And the Director of Transportation, Steve Eisenbrack, will explain to us why it costs that much.
2 seconds or less.
Thank you, Councilmember Price. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, I know that I'm under a tight deadline tonight, so we'll go right through it. This is 2 projects. Maybe that will help explain to Dr. Price the issue. These are 2 projects converted into one. Holcomb Bridge, we say Holcomb Bridge, it's State Route 140 from the Gwinnett County line to State Route 9, and at that point 92 goes over to the Cobb County line.
Thank you for that explanation. Does the council have any questions? Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Motion and a second. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hand.
We had 3
Passes
bids.
unanimously.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, serious though, excuse me, we did not lightly enter into that expenditure of monies, and it was properly bid, and we took the lowest bidder. Is that not correct?
Yes, ma'am. 3
Very
bids.
confident in the
Thank you.
procedure.
And we're within budget.
Thank you very much. Second item, number 14, approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a construction contract with Northwest Georgia Paving, NWGP, for the 2012 local maintenance and improvement grant road surfacing contract in the amount of $559,170.41. Again, Mr. Eisenbrack, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Price. We had 8 bids. The bids that came in were above the LIMIG amount. LIMIG, Local Maintenance and Improvement Grant from GDOT, is based on a formula of centerline miles and population. The grant amount is $497,000. The bids came in significantly above that. We are recommending to the City Council that we bid each road individually. What we would like to propose is that we resurface Mountain Park Road, and this would go from Old Mountain Park Road, this being Highway 92, Lita Thompson Park, Old Mountain Park Road to Highway 92, and Grimes Bridge Road, which would go, here's Holcomb Bridge. This would go from the roundabout, past the bridge, and over to Dogwood. Those two projects would cost the city $559,170.41. The delta being $62,170.41. We would propose taking that out of our existing resurfacing budget.
Any questions? Councilmember Price.
I know a number of us are probably disappointed that the Woodstock Road has been taken off that list for this year.
Yes.
And does that mean that we just need to find another funding source, or is it appropriate to be funded in this way next year?
Yes, ma'am. We'd roll it over to next year's funding.
Thank you.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Mr. Asenbrack, do either one of these roads have enough width that we could provide some bikeable shoulders?
As a matter of fact, the Mountain Park Road, we actually did add some shoulders. We spent the better part of a lot of times this winter. Mountain Park Road actually goes through a ridge line, and it had been under pressure over the years. It had some of the edges had collapsed, so we pulled some of that back. We fixed the drainage, and we added what we call a binder course, basically to act as an area that will receive a wider portion. In other words, in areas where we don't have the curb and gutter, which restricts our ability to add the bike shoulders, we have done an enormous amount of job along that whole corridor. So, as we repave it, you will now have bike shoulders. Now, okay? Good with that? Okay. Grimes Bridge is a little bit different because we have existing curb and gutter through the entire length. However, it is fairly wide, and when we repave it, we will restripe it for narrower lanes and to get as much bike shoulder as we can in that area.
Okay, great. I know that's an important part of our cycling program is to
Yes,
get
sir.
bikeable shoulders where we can. So
Yes, sir, and we are there.
great job on that.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the
Motion to second.
number 14.
Motion by Councilmember Price, seconded by Councilman Orleans. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion for closure? Motion approved. We're adjourned.
Go Blue tonight.
Great job on getting all your stuff.
Did you make sure that gets recycled?